To order this meeting of the San Diego Water District Board on February 17th of 2021. Would the city clerk please call the roll?
Yes, Board Member Hinsey? Board Member Mosca?
Here.
Vice President Blakespear?
Here.
And President Kranz?
Here.
Record will show that all members are present, and please note that San Diego Water District Board members do receive an independent stipend of $100 for convening the Water District meetings pursuant to San Diego Water District Resolution number 89-07.
Okay, thank you. If you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. And we have no special presentations or proclamations. So are there any oral communications?
No, there are not.
All right, and we did not have a closed session. Kathy, are there any changes to the agenda?
No changes to the posted agenda.
Okay, there are 2 items on the consent calendar, and I'd entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second that.
All right, we'll vote.
Okay, Board Member Hinsey?
Yes.
Board Member Mosca?
Yes.
Vice President Blakespear?
Yes.
And President Kranz?
Yes,
Motion carries unanimously.
thank you. And there are no action items tonight, but we do have 2 informational items. And the first one is a kind of interesting little twist on development in Encinitas, where a project was approved and the developer is going to make a contribution of $75,000 to the water district for the project known as Fox Point Farms on the currently agricultural site owned by Dram and Ector. And I asked that we put this on the agenda to just get a brief presentation and kick around some ideas about possible uses for the money.
All right, well, just to give you a quick overview, board, we did not have any issues with this development from a water capacity. Our system, as you folks all know, with conservation efforts over the last 10 years, our water consumption is significantly down, so there's plenty of capacity in our system. However, as you also know, we have a lot of issues at Lake Hodges. Our local water is incredibly important to the financial well-being of our ratepayers. So anything that we have to do out at Lake Hodges to maximize our ability to use local water is enormous financial savings to the ratepayers. So that's really the 25,000 that was.
Carl, I'm not able to hear you really well, and I didn't get the last part of like what you were saying in terms of Lake Hodges.
Let me try.
If you can, it sounds like you're kind of in a box.
All right, let me try that. Is that better? So what I was saying is, as the board knows, Lake Hodges, we have a lot of need out there. The dam, the problems with the dam, our limitation on our pool storage, everybody's pool storage, due to the condition of the dam. So we have a lot of uses. The developer's money, they tagged 25,000 of that could be used towards water supply development, which, as I said, we don't need new water supply, but we certainly have plenty of need out at Hodges because our local water is so cost effective as compared to imported water. Anything we can do to maximize our use of local water is a benefit to the ratepayers. So we will be able to find plenty of need out there to put money towards Lake Hodges. And the other 50,000 would go towards conservation efforts. And the board has probably heard us talking about the new state regulations that are coming out to require districts and require users, water users, to decrease their demand, and they're going to start enforcing per capita use limits on all water districts. So conservation initiatives are going to become very, we're really going to have to dig into that. As a matter of fact, an immediate need we may have. We're engaged right now with DWR on reviewing the data that they have put together for, they did a statewide analysis, and we're reviewing the data that they have compiled for our district. They've shared that with us. We've had one meeting with them. We're trying to wrap our hands around what we need to do to verify that data. So there may be an immediate need that we have right there. So those two uses, it's not going to be hard at all to use the $75,000.
All right, thank you. I don't see any raised hands. So my question is that when the money is received, will we come back with a formal plan for how to make use of the contribution? Is that the idea?
Yeah, we would need to come to the board with an appropriation request. You guys would have to receive the money donation, and then we would have to put in an appropriation request to be able to spend it.
Perhaps it's something we might want to take up with our environmental commission to see if they have any ideas, and they can work with staff to come up with a strategy. But mainly what I wanted to do is take the opportunity to make it public and discuss the benefits that the water district would accrue from this project. So if there are no additional questions.
I have a comment, President Krantz.
Yeah, Board Member Mosca.
Yeah, so this is great that we have the money to be used for these purposes. I just have a couple of ideas. I mean, I think that certainly the cost of Lake Hodges is going to be great and exceed perhaps our ability within our budget. So any money that we can gather to use toward that is good. But I'm not. At 75,000, I think that it may be better used for other things. A couple ideas that I have in terms of the 25,000, for new supplies, anything to help study indirect or direct potable reuse that we're doing with that we're looking at with Encina or with San Alejo. Any of those monies that could help. Shift the reality in, I know that Catherine and I at Encina talk about this all the time in terms of some of the regulations at the state level and getting, a lot of the ducks lined up at Encina to kind of to ensure that potable reuse is something that we can do in the future. So this is a new supply, right? It's a brand new supply. So 25,000. If we can use that to help enhance any of the studies that are being done and move that mark forward, that would be great. And the 50,000 in terms of conservation, we had a project before that I thought was really good. I understand why we cut it, which was the kind of garden that we're going to do outside the water district, and we had a good amount of money from County Water Authority. If we wanted to do anything in that vein of education, I'm all for it, to really kind of showcase to our residents and our water users how they can actually, implement some sort of conservation program that would be useful for them and that would help us and help them in terms of reducing their usage and also reduce their bill. Any kind of program like that. And I'd be happy to carry that to County Water Authority, see if we can get additional funding to match that money. But something along the lines of that kind of that garden, educational garden that we were thinking about before, or if there's something else, that actual items that we can purchase and give to users to help conserve water. I don't know anything kind of, at one time it was very, very much kind of the the shower, the low shower heads that were kind of not using as much water, something we could purchase for $50,000 and send out, or have at different street festivals for people that are water customers. But kind of thinking like that, certainly we need the money for Lake Hodges, but I think that the $75,000 could be used in a more creative way to really kind of get at conservation and also water supply as the kind of developers wanted to do with this money. So those are some ideas.
Thank you. Vice President Blakespear.
Yeah, I was just wondering if there's any understanding of the genesis of this particular gift of this money. What, do you know where exactly that came from, or?
Yes,
does anyone have insight?
It came from essentially a request from the appellants. They had identified a variety of mitigation that they were interested in to offset what they thought were issues related to the EIR that hadn't been mitigated appropriately. And as you may recall from the appeal, we disagreed, and so did the developer, with their assertion that it was a required mitigation, but the developer was prepared and willing to make the contributions that were outlined and requested by the appellants.
Okay.
So the applicants were willing to do what the appellants asked, even though there was no legal requirement to so do.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I remember that part. I was just wondering if there was something related to water that they were particularly focused on. But I guess, I'll just add that I think that whatever we use this money for should be somewhat narrowly tailored to this development. So instead of it going to fund, larger studies of the water in the water world, which I think are, there's always really expensive planning and studies that need to be done, but it can get lost and not be relevant to this project. And given the way these concessions came about, and I would just hope we could think about things that would benefit those residents or this development, the agricultural part of this development, as possible too. So that would just be my feedback.
Yes, I agree with that. And the Water District does have whether it's a pump station or some facility that's on Quail Gardens Drive, not far from this development, as well as the development is in the shadow of the Wonka tank. So I don't know if there's any way that the monies could be used to educate with either of those two facilities, but it might be something that would be worth exploring. So as I said, I just wanted to have the opportunity to kick this around a little bit. Once the monies are actually in hand, I know that the contribution is dependent upon avoiding litigation. So I don't know what the state of that particular situation is, but once we have the money, then we can get a little bit more formal about the conversation. But for now, I just wanted to have the opportunity to talk about it a bit and thank both the appellant who brought the idea up, as well as the applicant who generously was willing to make the contribution in spite of legally not having an obligation to do so. So
yeah, I would also say that there are a couple of assumptions I have, which is that when this new development's being developed, when these units are going to be developed, they're going to be, the newest in construction techniques, the newest in efficiency. And so I would just say that the units that come online are denser and more efficient than the housing units that currently exist within San Dieguito Water District territory. And that looking at the territory, if we're going to move the dial on conservation, looking at the territory as a whole, as opposed to looking specifically at this parcel, is probably going to benefit us in terms of the ultimately kind of conserving.
Okay, that's enough. Okay.
Ultimately,
thank you.
Ultimately conserving more water, and so I would just say, like, globally kind of looking at this, and then also supply. you know, I do understand that some people could look at like 200 units and say that we're in danger in terms of supply, but really the supply is globally, and it's not necessarily looking specifically at this facility, but looking at, you know, ways of continuing to kind of have local supplies in the future, as opposed to having to kind of wheel water from Colorado or from the State Water Project. So kind of looking at our territory and even looking at North County as a whole, kind of looking at how do we move the dial, the mark on these two important points, supply and also demand within conservation.
Okay, very good. I see no other raised hands, so with that, we will move on to item 11B, the unfunded actuarial liability paydown policy. A meeting or so ago, we had a conversation when we were receiving the consolidated financial annual report, and we talked about the paying down of the unfunded liability, and there were some questions that I had about you know, what we were doing in order to pay that down. And so Mary is here to talk a little bit about that particular issue.
Okay, thank you, President Kranz and members of the board. I'll attempt to share my screen because I have a very tiny presentation for you all. At the last month's meeting, the board directed staff to place an item on an upcoming agenda for the process and policy for the prepayment of the CalPERS pension liability. The district participates in the CalPERS shared risk pension benefit plan. Under the shared risk pool, investments are pooled with other small public agencies to reduce the individual risk and volatility. The ability to provide each agency with its own portion of the pool's unfunded liability had previously not been available. While approving the water rates in 2019, the board also approved an accelerated 15-year unfunded liability paydown. The following, this table summarizes the methods for making additional payments. And as you can see, the accelerated discretionary payments method has more benefits than the fresh start method. The best features of the additional discretionary payment is, of course, its flexibility. This is important because during any time of economic downturn, agencies using the ADP or additional discretionary payments method can make their own minimum required payment and then determine how much more they can afford to pay in addition to the minimum payment. The fresh start method doesn't have this flexibility as it essentially locks in an agency to the larger payments that it may have decided to pay to CalPERS. And this is regardless of whatever economic situation the agency might be paying. So in times when an agency might be experiencing lower revenue than anticipated, if they have selected the fresh start method, they are locked into making that larger payment, whether they can afford it or not. In March of last year, in 2020, the district made its fiscal year 1920 larger payment based on the 15-year pay down schedule. Because the accelerated schedule called for larger payments starting in fiscal year 1819, and that payment had been delayed while staff was exploring the most optimal pay down method, staff was able to make the 1819 payment as well. Staff will continue to budget $895,000 per year for additional unfunded liability paydown. And should the district experience any kind of financial downturn or its financial picture should change, then staff will return to the board for direction on payments that will be made above the minimum required payment. There is no recommended action on this other than for the board to receive and file this report and also to discuss if you have any questions. That ends my comment.
Excellent, thank you. I think that for me, the important point is that the payments will be made unless there's an item brought to the full board to consider perhaps either not paying as much or not paying at all. Is that correct?
That would be absolutely correct.
Okay, that's the way I would expect it. And will we, as part of our rate study, be evaluating that amount and or consider increasing or decreasing? How do we anticipate to factor in the unfunded liability as part of our next rate study?
We currently have a rate study going on right now, and they're factoring in the 15-year pay down schedule.
Okay.
Unless the board directs us to either accelerate it even further. But given the current situation with the pandemic, revenues have dipped very, very slightly, less than 0.5%. So we're reluctant to make any changes to the PERS payment. I think we're going to continue to afford that $895,000 annual payment. And we can always revisit that issue should the financial picture change again.
Great, thank you. Vice President Blakespear.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the brief report. So I just want to clarify that what we're saying is that we have an informal policy, or maybe it's a formal policy that we are making. It's kind of like making extra payments on our mortgage per year without refinancing the mortgage to be 15 years instead of 30. And so if we're going to stop that and all of a sudden not make those payments out of 15 years, we will take that back to the board. So whatever the circumstances are that might be driving that change, we would be able to consider that, but we'll be operating with this understanding that we're trying to pay it off with these extra mortgage payments, basically.
Correct.
I think that's great. And it seems like the best way to save money and also pay off our pension debt earlier. And hopefully we also, like the city, are not accumulating more unfunded pension debt that we have capped. We have decided to pay that off as we accumulate it each year and not create an ongoing additional new debt. Is that the case?
That is correct. Also.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, I fully support this and I'm glad we're doing it. Thank you.
Board Member Mosca.
Yeah, no, I agree with this course of action. Our last rate study, when we decided what course of action we were going to take, where we were going to be in terms of the increase in rates, we decided that we wanted to pay this down within 15 years. And so our rates were based on that. The only reason why it's not amortized as 15 is because staff had let us know that the flexibility of not communicating that to CalPERS and having it re-amortized at 15 was better and more flexible for the district. But I agree with my colleagues that the rates are what they are because we were paying it down in 15 years. And so this is, I see it as formal as you get, that we made, a commitment to pay it down in 15 years. Now going forward in the new rate study, I'd remind us that we changed our policies. In the last rate study, we not only changed our policy with regard to reserves, we sold an asset in Cardiff that was surplus, and we still went up quite a, I was going to say quite a bit, but I think that it wasn't really quite a bit because of the fact that the rates hadn't been raised in a couple of years. And so I would just say that to stay status quo after this last rate case in terms of 15 years is going to be a little bit more painful than it had been in the past. And so to continue paying down in 15-year trajectory is going to take some wherewithal on our part to stay the course. I would imagine when they present us with the new rates going forward. But I'm in favor of that, as we have been in the past.
Yeah, and I would say that, I think that given the current economic conditions with the COVID and such, that to me, it's pretty important that we, as part of the study, look closely at anything that is going to cause the rates to ratepayers to go up. And so in the circumstance where maybe it's going up, I might be willing to consider, going with a 20-year plan as opposed to a 15-year plan in order to soften the impacts of a rate increase. And so it would be good as part of the study if we were presented with those sort of calculations that might give us an option to, if not eliminate any rate increase, possibly just to soften it a bit. But that conversation can be difficult, and I think that was the most important part of why I thought it was important to have this conversation, is that we have these studies, we have these conversations, we make decisions about what the new rates will be based upon the obligations that we see, and this was one that we committed to. And so, if we're going to consider the rates again, I don't think there's anything wrong with looking at alternatives that may make an adjustment to what we're paying, how much we're paying it down, if it can soften the impacts of possible rate increases. So
yes. The staff, I think this time we're all going to kind of engage in the discussion of the rate study as a whole. The last time we did a subcommittee, and as part of the subcommittee, the consultant and staff presented myself and Mark Muir, with former council member Mark Muir, with about 4 or 5 different options that looked at all of these different avenues, and then we chose from that. And I think we only presented you guys with the option that we actually recommended. So the staff will come forward with all of those different options. But I got to say, I still am very keen on staying the course of 15 years and getting it paid off, because I think future pain would be even more. And so there you have 2 options. There you have 2 different ideas, staff, in terms of bringing back options for us.
Yeah, and I'm inclined to stay the course, but I'm also concerned about what an increase in rates might mean for those of our customers who are on the, already on the edge. So, we see from this perspective, we know on the city side, there are some fees that are going to be going up for solid waste issues. And so, I think that any opportunity we might have to for a couple of years, reduce those impacts, I think it would be better. But in the end, it's going to be a board conversation, and I look forward to having that conversation. So seeing no other hands, I will thank you, Mary, for bringing that and that presentation and making the clarifications that we requested. So thank you. And with that, we're on to whether there are any board members with reports pursuant to AB 1234 or anybody with direction to staff. I see no hands. There's one hand.
I would just say, as your representative of County Water Authority, I know that County Water Authority has been sending out some information about our success with lawsuits against MWD. It was just announced that final judgment was handed down in one of our cases regarding the transportation costs on some of our QSA supplies, and that amount was about $44 million. We have now received, we are now in receipt of $44 million check. It's in the bank for County Water Authority. We've also filed documents with the court in terms of attorney fees and cost, which I think are going to be north of several millions of dollars. And so that's something that may also go up on appeal in terms of what the proper attorney fees and costs are. So we are getting closer to limited amount of questions at Water Authority regarding these lawsuits. It really is coming down to what are the benefits in terms of some of the costs that we pay for transportation of that QSA water. And this is really kind of the genesis of this discussion and lawsuits now, which really obviously also drives the discussion about regional conveyance system and all of this other conversation. So hopefully in a not too distant future, I will be saying that, letting you know that we've resolved all of our disputes and the San Diego County water users and ratepayers are being made whole, and we're also settling all future kind of conflicts. So hopefully that's coming soon. But if you have any questions, let me know.
Thank you. And I have been receiving those emails from the Water Authority. I happen to be a subscriber to a couple other newsletters via my email inbox threatening litigation with the CWA over their proposed project across the desert. So you may settle one or win one lawsuit and end up with another one. So I hope we can avoid that. That would be really good. I know your position on this, and I appreciated you taking that position. And it is my hope that there will be another opportunity to squash that bug. So, Board Member Blakespear, did you have something you wanted to add? No? Carl, General Manager, update/report.
Nothing additional to update.
Okay. So that brings us to adjournment, and our next regular board meeting will be held on March 17, 2021. So with that, we're adjourned.
Can we just stay on